Hey guys, I am back, and today I will be showcasing the HTTP node Multipart Upload that will allow you to upload any binary file to any desired endpoint using the multipart format. In this video, we are going to be using the OpenAI API, and we're going to be converting voice recordings into text transcripts. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Before we continue, I just wanted to throw out a little disclaimer that this tutorial is based on a plugin. The plugin you can see on your screen right now, it's called the HTTP and JSON Blueprint utility. Alternatively, you could also use the HTTP Pro plugin. Both plugins will allow you to follow the video, and you can see both of the plugins on screen right now. If this is something you're interested in, links to these plugins will be in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So now in the project, as you guys can see, we are in the default Unreal Engine template. This is for Unreal Engine 5.7, and the template is the third-person template. So if you guys would like to follow along, that is just it, just a third-person template, and this is the starting point for this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually enable the plugin itself. So I've already added the plugin to my engine plugins list, and I'm just going to enable the plugin now for this project itself. So up in edit plugins under UForge, I will have the HTTP and JSON plugin. And as mentioned in the disclaimer, this HTTP and JSON plugin will work alongside the HTTP Pro plugin. Both plugins will be able to achieve this outcome we're going to create in this tutorial. Yeah, so with that out of the way, I'm going to enable this plugin, restart my project, and I will be right back. Okay, so now back in the project, we have all of the requirements already set up and ready to go. So now we actually need to figure out what we want to achieve in this episode. Before I start recording, I have done some research into finding the best API that I could showcase that uses a multipart upload, and I have found that OpenAI actually uses a multipart upload API for creating transcriptions. So what this will do is it will take in an audio file, read all of the voice or words that are being said in the audio file, and then output a JSON file with the text that it has detected being spoken in the video. And as you guys can see here, if you want to have a pause of this video and read what's going on, here is the actual API documentation. And on the right here, you can see this is what you will receive as a response from the API. And right here is actually how you call the API to perform this task. So this is what we're going to do in this episode. So now in the project, let's find the actual player character blueprint, which I've already found. It is under third person and blueprints. Then opening up the third person character, we will see that we only have inputs right here. We don't actually need any of this, so we can just move it out of the way. And let's start out by creating a begin play node. So as soon as the game starts, we will run our API calls and logic. So first things first, we're going to actually need the node itself. So upload multipart file, this one right here. And I will do a quick overview of what this node actually does with all of its settings before I actually start using it. So the URL is just the endpoint or the link to the API you want to use. So in this case, it would be the OpenAI transcript URL or the endpoint. The timeout is how long the request is going to stay active for before being considered a fail and being dropped. So this is in seconds. So if I was to set it to 60, this is 60 seconds. If the endpoint does not come back to us with a success or false, we will assume it has failed and drop the call. We then have this struct, which we have to make. And this just gives you some upload settings. So as this is a multipart form request, the way this is structured is there is boundaries and dividers between each piece of data. And here you can define if you would like a random boundary to be created or if you would like to specify your own boundary. On screen right now, I will show you a example of how a multipart form request looks like under the hood, so you understand what this is referencing. So moving on, we have the headers. So headers are exactly the same as headers for HTTP requests. This is the key and the value. So for instance, when you want to pass in an authentication key, you would have the name of the field here and the actual key here. And you can add as many headers as you want. Each key value are connected into one header. Moving on, we actually have the file data itself. So this is an array. This will take as many files as you want to upload to your given endpoint. So for my situation and for this tutorial, I am going to only use one file, but this can be expanded on as many as you want. Once you create your array, you also have to create a new struct out of this. So each struct will contain all of the information about the files you want to upload. So expanding this struct, we will have all of the settings we can do. So first one is if we want to include the file content type. So this is a must, and I would recommend 100% of the time setting this to true and providing a content type with the file you're passing in. A lot of APIs require this, so this is just like a must in 99% of API calls you will encounter. So moving on, we have the field name. So this is the name of the field that is going to take or receive the actual binary data you're going to upload. So in most cases, the API will give you an example of what that field name is. I know from looking at the OpenAI documentation, this will be called file. So this will be file. And when I upload this binary data, this is part of the field file. This might sound a little confusing right now, but as we get into it, it will become much more self-explanatory and you'll be able to understand it better. Next, we have the file content type. So this also is basically 100% of the time needed. A lot of API calls require a content type, and it's better to pass it in than not. And it will not hurt to pass it in, and it might hurt you if you don't pass it in. Disclaimer though, for this to work, you must check this bool to true. If this is unticked, then this will not be considered. So in situations where you don't need it, just do not check this, and this will not be considered as the final result. Moving on, we actually have the file name itself. So whatever file you're trying to upload, provide the name of the file and the extension. So if we're going to be uploading an MP3 and the name of that file is called speech, then this would be speech.mp3. Next, we actually have the binary itself. So this is the binary data of the file we want to upload. Moving on, we have another boolean that will define if we want to include content types. But before I explain this one, I will explain the last two entries, so this one will make more sense. So let's first look at multipart data. What this will do is allow you to attach any data you would like together with your file upload. So for example, if you're using an API that will take an image and convert that image into any style you would like, but you have to provide a style, here is where you would provide that additional information. And as this is a tmap, you can provide as much additional information as you want or are required by the API that you're using. If you would like to find out more about multipart data itself, on screen right now you'll see a link to another video that fully goes into just explaining the multipart request node. So moving on, right above multipart data, we have an array that is called multipart content type. And what this will do is just define the content type for each additional multipart data you have provided. Just note that for every multipart data you provide, you do not need to provide a content type. But if you do provide content types, make sure that the length of the multipart data and the length of the content type array are the same length. If, for instance, you add one more content type, then there is additional multipart data entries, the program will crash because you've tried to add more content types than there is additional fields. So now knowing what the multipart content type array is, if we go back to the boolean above it, which says include multipart content type, this is exactly the same as the boolean at the very top. If this bool is set to false, it will ignore the whole array of multipart content types and will not include any content type whatsoever. But it would still work with the additional multipart data fields. If that boolean is checked, you will be including content types. So not every API requires additional content types, but if for some reason your request isn't working or your API requires content types, here is where you would provide them. Okay, so that was a lot of explaining, and I understand that might have been very confusing. I'm going to delete all of this now, and let's create a practical example that actually showcases all of this in action. So before we do actually start uploading anything, we need some sort of audio data. So I thought it would be the best thing to do is just to record some raw audio data right now in front of you guys to show you how it works from start to finish. So I'm going to record some audio of me just saying some words, and I will be right back. So I have gone ahead and recorded a clip of me talking and just trying to see what the OpenAI will actually be able to do. So here is the clip I recorded. This audio is being recorded to test the upload multipart file that is part of the plugin HTTP and JSON. It is going to be sent from Unreal Engine to OpenAI and then hopefully it will transcribe all of the stuff I said and return it in a nice clean JSON file so I can then read it as text. Okay, so that is the file we're actually going to upload to OpenAI, and hopefully it will do what I said. It will transcribe that file and output a nice JSON file with the text. So now that we actually have the audio recorded, the last step we need to do before we can actually start blueprinting this is take that audio file and move it into our projects directory. So right here we have the actual recorded voice. That is the audio file that I have just recorded, and right here is the project that I'm currently working in. So what we have to do is just take this audio file and move it into the directory of the current project we're in. So for later, when we're working in blueprints, it will be easier to find the audio file. Instead of having to type in very specific file paths, we can just access the directory itself and then access that audio file. Okay, so now we actually can do the blueprint. So first thing what we need to do is actually load the audio file we just have created and moved into the project files. So to load the file, we are going to use the async load binary file, like that. And on success, we're just gonna plug that into the multipart file. And the file we're gonna load is the audio I have recorded. And here is why we actually moved the audio into the project directory. Because now, for the file directory, we can just do get project directory. And this will access the directory of our project. And that is where the audio file is currently being held. And the file name is recorded voice.mp3. I have it on my second monitor, so I'm just gonna copy it over like that. So now this actually points to this folder right here, and the name of the file is this file right here. So this is the file we're loading. So the next thing what we need to do is actually provide the URL or the endpoint of this API we're going to work with. So my other monitor, I actually have it open up. So I'm just going to copy it over and paste it. So this is the endpoint of OpenAI, which we're going to be working with. The timeout is 60. So I'm just going to, well, the timeout can be anything. I'm going to leave it as 60. For the upload settings, I am going to just leave it as random boundary because I don't want to provide my own boundary. I don't need it. And then for the headers, we actually need to pass in a few headers. So the first header will be the authorization, which is an OpenAI key that tells OpenAI that I am actually a legit user and I'm not no bot, or I'm not trying to flood your systems. So this will be the actual key value, the key header, and the value will be the actual key itself, like that. If you want to follow along and you want to also set up an OpenAI request, you will need to create your own OpenAI API key. That can be found on the actual OpenAI dashboard. If you just follow the steps, you should be able to create a key. I have already done this and generated a key for myself, and I'm just going to copy it over and paste it in right here. It is a little bit long, so just going to move it away, but this will be the authentication for you with OpenAI. Moving on, we actually need to pass in the content type. So the content type will be content type, and the actual value is multipart form data. And this is it. So for the headers, this is all we need to do. The authorization with the key and the content type, which is the form data. And then we can move on to the actual file itself. So we're going to make a new array, then make a new structure. And this struct is representing one file. And in this case, we're going to include the file content type so that we want to do this. We're then actually going to include the field name. So looking at OpenAI documentation, I can see that this field name is called file. So I'm just going to type in file. Next, we actually need to pass in the content type. So this plugin actually comes with one handy function that is called getFileMime type. This will automatically find the content type for you based on what kind of file you want to upload. And all you have to do is pass in the file path. So in this case, we just have to get the project directory and append the file name and the extension. And this will give you the actual file MIME type. Yeah, so this will do the trick. I can't remember off the top of my head what kind of MIME type it is, but you can trust that this will solve it for you. We then have the file name, and as you can see, this is the name and the extension. So the name is recordedvoice.mp3, so let's just paste that into here. Next, we have the actual binary of the file. So this will be the out binary data here. So just pass that in. You could create a variable of this, but just be very aware that when you're working with binary files, of files that you're loading, these arrays can become very, very big. I'm talking like 20, 30,000 entries in a single array. And that is okay, but as soon as you try to debug and you try to preview the array, you have a high chance of freezing or crashing the engine, because Unreal trying to display 30,000 entries in an array is just not very efficient and healthy for the engine to do it. So in this case, I will just pass it in like this. It is spaghetti code and it's horrible, but for the video is fine. For your own projects, just make sure do not preview the debug of it, because it might crash. Next, the multipart. So I don't actually need to pass in any multipart content type with this request. I'm just gonna leave this as false. So because I'm leaving this as false, I don't actually need to pass in any content type here. So we can skip both of these and move on to multipart data. And looking at the OpenAI documentation, I can see that this also requires me to pass in a model. So I could actually choose what kind of model I want to use for OpenAI to transcribe my video. So in this case, I am just going to use the default model they recommend, which is GPT 4o transcribe. Like that. And that is everything. So if I compile and save, this should work. So now as soon as I run this, it is going to fire and send the API request. But at the moment, we have nothing plugged in into onSuccess or failed. So let's quickly just pull out from out.json, do toString, and then do pretty print. We're going to copy this and do onFailed at the same time. So now we can check if it's going to succeed or fail based on debugging both of these. I'm going to add breakpoints here. and I'm going to go back into the game and start the game. And hopefully after a few seconds, the breakpoint is hit, and now we know if we succeeded or failed. So I see that on success was triggered, so I know that the request was successful. And I can actually preview the output JSON by just hovering my mouse over this out JSON. And I can already see some of the text right there. If I expand on this, I actually don't see anything, but if you hover your mouse over this, this shows you the actual full JSON that was responded back to us from OpenAI. So I know it's working. So what I have to do now is actually just parse this JSON file so we can actually easily access the string we're looking for. So now I know that it's working. I'm going to remove both of these convert JSON to string nodes and actually just directly try to access the data. So I know we're looking for string data. So I am going to look for string, try get string field on success. And the field itself is called text. And if this is successful, I am going to print that to screen. And the log also. And I'm going to keep the duration for 10 seconds, okay? So with all of this done, I'm going to compile, save, go back into the game and run it again. And hopefully after a few seconds, we're going to see a debug message with the text that I said in that audio file. So if I just close the game and go into the output log, I should be able to see it here, right here. And that's actually quite cool. Every time I took a pause in the video, it actually adds pauses in this text file. So as you guys can see here, that adds dots where I was actually just thinking what to say. So that's actually that's a very cool API. Can do some powerful stuff. Okay, so we know this is working. It's all fine. I'm going to do a little cleanup. So just to make this look a bit tidier. And I'll get back to you guys in a second. Okay, so after cleanup, this is what I am left with. So as you guys can see, there is not much here. There's not a lot of logic needed to set up very interesting, cool systems that allow you to communicate with very powerful API endpoints straight from blueprints on Unreal Engine. Here, what you can see is all it takes for you to send and receive responses from OpenAI. And the possibilities of what you can do with this are limited by your imagination and the actual API itself. And for loading files, all I did is just convert this to a macro and just have the async node here, which allows you to load the file in. So this will be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a little bit about the multi-part upload node. It wasn't very eventful, this one. I know it was just displaying some text on screen at the end of the day. But it was to demonstrate the actual node itself and how it can be used to create cool and interesting systems. And with this knowledge, you should be able to take it and extrapolate it now to your own systems. But whatever you guys do make, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next episodes.